Are you ready for another adventure? Well, come with me. Today, we're going to Powerscourt. Powerscourt is possibly one of the most beautiful estates in County Wicklow. It's got lush green, perfectly manicured lawns, carefully planned and maintained themed gardens, and a lot of history. However, Powerscourt hides a dark past. Where the house stands now, in the 12th century, there was a proper medieval castle. Come with me on this adventure, and I will take you through the last 800 years of history. In the story, I guarantee you want to stick to the end, is something right out of Game of Thrones. So why Powerscourt? Where did it get such an awesome name? When I say it out loud, I just imagine a superhero inside a high-tech hideout. So how did this estate get this fantastic name? Well, to answer that question, we have to go back about 1,000 years. The Normans first invaded Ireland in 1169. However, this wasn't your standard, let's invade, conquer, and expand our territory type of invasion. They were basically called in by Dermot MacMurchada, who had been the king of Leinster from 1127 to 1166. He reached out to King Henry II of England to help him regain his kingship. He also reached out to Richard de Clare, also known as Strongbow, the second Earl of Pembroke. Now, if these names sound familiar to you, it's because they were also involved in the ploy on Carrickfergus Castle. If you missed that one, you might want to watch that video next. This was the beginning of the Anglo-Norman invasion of Ireland. So, Dermot regained his kingship in 1169, 3 years later. He ruled until his death in about 1171. Then his son became king, but that only lasted 4 years because he died in 1175. If you search for kings of Leinster, records go back to about 634 BC, although there have been kings for much longer than that. I counted at least 105 kings until the end in 1632, when the English crown took over many of the kingdoms of Ireland, and Leinster was incorporated in the English-controlled province of Leinster. So I guess we can blame Dermot for the English taking over Ireland for the next 700 years. So, in the 1300s, the lands were called Ballitenanth, and they belonged to Geoffrey Le Poer. The de la Poer family was a wealthy English family that rose to power under King Henry III in 1261. The Irish chapter is linked to the history of Waterford, and the family is said to have a dark history of their own, but that's a separate story altogether. It seems that they had a curse attached to them, and this would permeate in Powerscourt for centuries to come, and you will see why in a moment. So Geoffrey got the lands from Eustace Le Poer, and he built Ballitenanth Castle. De la Poer means power or of power in English, so the family name became Power, and that's how the castle itself got the name Powerscourt. Well, the Powers would not keep the estate for long. You see, the lands around the castle belonged to the O'Toole family for centuries, and of course they wanted them back. The castle was attacked several times, and records show that in 1316 the government had taken possession to defend against the Irish. The castle was eventually destroyed and lay in ruins until about 150 years later, when in 1482 Garret Fitzgerald, the 8th Earl of Kildare, just took possession of the area, and around 1500 he rebuilt the castle. But the O'Tooles were not having that either, and it was destroyed again in 1535, a mere 35 years later, during the rebellion of Silken Thomas. Now, Silken Thomas was Thomas Fitzgerald, the 10th Earl of Kildare, and he was cousins with Henry VIII. Now, there's a lot of history there, but the outcome of the Silken Thomas revolt was that Henry now started to pay more attention to Ireland. And this was a factor in the creation of the Kingdom of Ireland in 1542. 3 years later, the lands were granted to the Talbot family of Bellegarde, who later built Bellegarde Castle in the 18th century. This part of the Talbot family is not the same that built Malahide Castle. That is yet another video that you might want to see next. So the Talbots took over the lands in 1538, but they gave this part of the estate back to the O'Tooles, who held it for about 65 years until Phelim O'Toole's death in 1603. However, Phelim's death was not a natural death. You see, Phelim had constantly switched sides in the battle between Queen Elizabeth I of England and the local Wicklow clans. The Wingfields had had their eye on the property for a long time, and they needed Phelim to give it up. So, in a plot that's right out of Game of Thrones, the Wingfields plotted to draw Phelim into an act of rebellion against the crown. The penalty for a rebellion was to forfeit his lands. So the feud carried out until when, in 1603, Phelim was cornered near the castle, and he was killed by the Wingfields in the area now known as the Killing Hollow, which you can visit, and it's in Tower Valley near the Pepperpot Tower. On October 27, 1603, he ended the O'Toole's lineage of the estate. The Wingfields' plot had worked. So far, the lands had gone from the local clans to the Power family, then to the Fitzgeralds, to the Talbots of Bellegarde, back to the O'Tooles, and then in 1609 they were awarded forever to Richard Wingfield by Queen Elizabeth I. He had converted the ruined Ballintenneth Castle into a great mansion. The original castle walls were incorporated into the construction. This was the beginning of the 350 years of the Wingfields in Powerscourt. Oh, but this story is not over yet. It seems the Le Poer curse was still very much active. The mansion was destroyed by fire in the rebellion of 1641, when the Irish rebelled against King Charles I's new laws and impositions of the Protestant faith on the Irish Catholics. It's not clear what happened after this, but the great house was rebuilt in 1731, which is the house we see today. There were many illustrious guests during that time, such as King George IV in 1821. In 1857, the 7th Viscount Powerscourt, Mervyn Wingfield, renovated the house and created the gardens. Then, in 1961, the 9th Viscount Powerscourt sold the estate to Ralph Slazenger, who founded the sporting goods business. These two families were connected when Wendy Slazenger, Ralph's daughter, married Mervyn Wingfield, the 10th Viscount Powerscourt, in 1962. So was the house finally at peace? Well, hardly. It seems the Le Poer curse would strike again in 1974, when the house was once again gutted by fire. It stood empty and in ruins until 1990, when the Slazengers decided to rebuild. However, only 2 of the original rooms would be restored to their original state. The rest of the house was converted into retail units, and visitors now have retail shops, restaurants, and a cafe. The original house was too far gone to be completely restored, so an engineer built a house inside the house. So the external walls are the original walls, but the internal walls are a completely modern structure. The reason this estate was so important and so many tried to take control of it is because the place where the castle was built and the estate itself, the location, allowed the owner to control access to the nearby Dargle, Glencree, and Glencullen rivers. Could the Le Poer curse be responsible for all the tragedy and destruction, not letting any structure stand here for too long? Is the estate fated to be destroyed yet again, consumed by fire, only to be rebuilt over and over? Let me know what you think down in the comments. The fact is, the current Powerscourt house and gardens is an amazing estate with beautiful gardens, and it is a lovely experience you should not miss out on. Today, it includes a 5-star hotel, an amazing golf course, and a distillery. So if you want to know more about the estate, check out my tour of Powers Court House and Gardens. If you have a little more time, I've linked one of the videos that I think you would like to watch next. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.